Hey everybody, I'm back with a new comic book spoiler review, and this one's gonna be probably like my second biggest comic review that I've done on the channel. The first one being the Spider-Verse Volume 1 comic review that I did a year ago, which you can check out on my YouTube channel. I want to just get right into it because this is going to be a long one, and pardon some of my sniffling. I'm just getting over a cold because it's like the weather has been like crazy. I'm just finished, like, enough of recuperating, so now that I am all together, at least enough for me to carry on like a long conversation. So pardon a few sniffles here and there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share this with your friends. My Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, links are in the description below. So anyway, this is X-Men Age of Apocalypse. Now we're going to go through like a bit of the prelude to it too, because it all fits. The X-Men gone through like a lot of timey-wimey BS in their history. This one being the most prolific, I think. Well, I think probably like the second most prolific one. So anyway, we start out going through like, what's going on after, with each of the members of the X-Men after some previous adventure that they have. So they're trying to get their bearings a bit. This is around the time when the whole thing with the legacy virus was carrying on, and Beast was trying to find a cure to that, and the legacy virus being like AIDS epidemic for the mutant population. It's kind of like the when the legacy virus was created, it was supposed to be like the when it was invented, it was like, okay, this is like speaking about the whole AIDS epidemic of the time, and that's where there was fitting into this narrative here for the X-Men and trying to find a cure to that. I think they eventually did find a cure, and from what I remember, because I didn't read like the actual story on how they finally resolved it, I just looked it up one day because it was like a huge thing in the 90s or up to the early 2000s. It was like this legacy virus, and it's like, did I even solve that crap? Like, what's up with that? What happened to that? I looked it up one time, and it had something to do with Colossus' little sister. Excuse me. It had something to do with Colossus' little sister, Illyana, and her death from the legacy virus resulted in some kind of vaccine that Hank figured, used to figure out the cure to all that. It's something about that. It's been a while, but I remember it had something to do with Colossus' little sister at the time. So then we also got, the whole situation with Rogue doing, on and outs with Rogue, the will they won't they kind of stick that was going through. It also ties in to Rogue's little mini series that I did like a review on up on the channel. And Bobby Drake was going through some kind of existential crisis because not too long ago Emma Frost took over his mind and was able to use his powers to his fullest degree, where he was kind of like, I've been learning, he was getting insecure with his own abilities because like I've been studying at this school, learning how to use my powers with Xavier, and I was at nowhere near capable of pulling off certain things with my own powers that Emma managed to do while she temporarily took over my body. And I remember at one point looking this up that uh, Bobby at some point asked Emma Frost how did she manage to pull off using his powers to his fullest degree, and she just, because at the time she was pretty much an asshole, it's like, well, you're gonna have to figure that out yourself. I'm not gonna tell you. Like, why? Like why would you not, tell him? But because at the time she was an asshole. And like well, for the most part, I love the art in this event. Of course, they swap out certain, because this is like a very long event, and this is like the prelude. But the prelude art is probably like my favorite. But there's certain parts of the art in like the main like story. For the most part, it's pretty solid artwork. But it's just like I state many times before, the 90s and the early 2000s art is probably my favorite in terms of art, and maybe just nostalgia. Excuse me. But then we get right into the nitty gritty of like, where this is gonna be ducktailing into. If you recall, from my other X-Men TV show reviews, there's this character named Legion who is the son of Professor Xavier, and this other woman who is supposed to be Asian, but sometimes they give her like a different ethnicity, but what's the doggone woman's name? Because David Haller. And what's the mom's name? What is the mom's name? Uh, Gabriel Haller. Well, maybe it was just the anime X-Men show, because he's depicted as Japanese there. But I don't know. The ethnicity can go back and forth. It all depends. I don't. She's an Israeli, background. So yeah. Like I said, they flip flop from like a white person, or with the like white person, whether it's Israeli, or in the X-Men Evolution, she's just like kind of like a British woman. In the comics, he's Israeli, as is depicted here in the story, and of course, in the anime X-Men, she's Japanese. So it's just like, depending on how you want to tell the story, that's where it is, but whatever. But she a long time ago, she and uh, Xavier hooked up and had a son named David. And for a good while, Xavier did not know that the boy existed. But when he did find out, the kids had like DID, or previously known as split personality disorder, which he's one of the most OP mutants in Marvel Comics, where it's not just psychic abilities, he's reality warper too. We go over his powers really quick, because he's the probably one of the biggest focal points of this story. Legion is an Omega level mutant with the ability to create spontaneous mutations with varying attributes due to either his immense powers, mental instability, or a combination of the two. David creates a new persona or alter to govern each one of these new powers. He said that he had in his mind 200 Omega level split personalities. Rogue stated that while she was inside Legion, she was connected to thousands of types of powers, and there were more being born all the time. Wow. So it's a lot. I'm gonna try to cover, as at least some of these. We got like Jamil Karami, personality number 2, a terrorist leader who once tried to restructure David's fractured personality in his own image. He possessed telepathy. Jack Wayne, personality number 3, swaggering adult roustabout adventurer with the ability of telekinesis. Cindy, a temperamental, rebellious girl with pyrokinesis. The Legion, self-described as real me and by magic as God Mutant, he's able to warp reality to his will and manipulate time. Sally, personality, well, the first few go up to number 5, but then Sally is number 67, an obese, lonely woman with Hulk-like super strength and increased muscle mass. Johnny Gamora, able to transmute objects and enemies into salts. We got like a personality number 115, British punk rocker, appears to channel sound into energy blast. Personality 181, little known about this persona, but it can enlarge itself to an undetermined size. Time Sink, personality 227, one of the alters who escaped from Legion's consciousness after the Age of X. He was apprehended and reabsorbed by Legion with the help of the X-Men. He can manipulate time. Personality 302, rapid punching powers. Styx, persona 666, touch of death power. Personality 749, electrical discharge. Personality 762, a pirate that appears to belch an acid gas. Personality 898, a centaur. Personality 933, emit gaseous material at high speeds. Delphic, personality 1012, blue skin, seemingly omniscient seer, willing to answer 3 questions to supplicants. Bleeding image, don't know what number. They kind of lost count after a certain point. Living voodoo doll, absence, alien demon creature who claims to have traveled through realities and stars, power to siphon off heat and love. And that's about as far as like I want to go through all this stuff right now, but it's just like he's one of the most OP mutants of all time. Just do whatever you can come up with. And after a previous situation, because he would be responsible for the death of Destiny, which results in 1 second. Yeah, he was instrumental in the death of the mutant Destiny, who can see the future to a certain extent, depending on the situation. Who's also the girlfriend of Mystique, and Mystique will be instrumental in trying to find Legion and kill him for the death of Destiny. Now, he for a while was in a coma until he woke up, and not only that, all those personalities are melded into one being this time, which make him like even more powerful, because now he has full control of every little thing, because each persona had one thing. Now it all roll into one. And of course, for the longest time, Legion had animosity towards his father, but then has more of a come to Jesus moment now and sees the purpose of his father. And now he has an animosity towards Magneto, because Magneto is responsible for pretty much interfering with his father's progress of achieving mutant and human relations, because Magneto kept constantly like causing troubles that his father has to send his X-Men to go stop all the time, and making it harder and harder for his father to achieve his lifelong dream. And in Legion's warped mind, well, we can easily solve this. Take out freaking Magneto. But we'll get back into that in a minute. So we see X Factor, led by the Mutant Forge, who is like a government-sanctioned mutant team who is tasked of trying to capture Mystique. And they also are looking after Legion, because they know that she's going to be trying to come after him. And so, of course, it comes true when Mystique tried to impersonate his mom. She gets busted, and so she makes her escape. And of course, Forge had a personal investment in this, because him and Mystique had like a thing going on too. But not sure how 100% this is like real or just in David's head, but in his mind he sees the image of Destiny, say like, hey, we got like, you got a particular goal that you need to do. Tell Mystique, I love her, and all this other stuff, which David eventually tells her all this stuff, and he gets her inside his mind so she can see what he's telling the truth. And I want to put a point to this, because it's always I get weirded out for this, because it makes no logical sense. Why is David's hair always stuck up like kid from Kid and Play. I don't understand that. It's ridiculous. And even to this day, in current comics, his hair is always like that, and it's like it makes no sense. Why? Uh, so he gets inside his mind, relays the message that Destiny wants to relay. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's just in his head or this is like a for real thing. I'm not sure. But Legion, once he got that out the way, he has like a mission, a personal mission he wants to complete. So he makes his escape while incapacitating Mystique to later be captured by the X Factor. Then the X-Men gets called upon by David's mom, Gabriel, who sends a few of the team to her in Israel because David is like building power essentially to not gonna bury the lead here. He's planning on using his powers to go back in time because he knows that he cannot, go toe to toe with Magneto present day because Magneto's way too experienced and grown way too powerful for him to go one-on-one with. And besides, wouldn't really amount to much even if he pulled out a win because the damage has already been done, and his constant interference since the formation of the X-Men has caused rifts between certain humans like Senator Kelly and stuff like that, and Bovalar Trask and all the other mutant hating type of people that we're familiar with. And it's like, okay, the damage is already done because all these, evil mutants, led by Magneto for the most part, had caused people to second guess mutants far too much. So it's like, okay, we'll go back in time before he even contemplate being an antagonist towards his father, and he wouldn't have grown so powerful, and he wouldn't be as experienced. It would be a little bit more of a level playing field at that point. So, aside from Jean Grey, we got Bishop, Iceman, and Storm and Psylocke getting caught up in David's time warp, and they get thrown back into the past with most of their memories kind of scrambled up until with at the very least knowing who their names are and that they're friends, but outside of that they can't remember how they got here or what's going on. And there's gonna be a thing when dealing with this time travel going on with people losing most of their memories for some doggone reason. It's never really explained why that's, because outside of this, it's never been a thing with the X-Men or even any other Marvel comic where you travel through time and then you forget what happened, kind of thing. So we see moments of the past with Xavier and Magneto helping out at this hospital, and of course at that time they didn't know each other are mutants. For all they know, they're just Magneto thinks Charles is like a human friend and vice versa. But they just build up their you can see their budding friendship from the start, and their respect and admiration towards each other build up from the start. And you see, it's very rare you see Xavier being like a badass. There's moments where he helps out this mutant in a who's being harassed at a bar, and you see him and Magneto going toe to toe, going back to back I should say, dealing with all these creeps in this bar fight, and it's like pretty dope because you rarely get to see like Xavier actually throwing hands. And of course, Legion ends up, I guess, I'm not sure because he doesn't look like himself. Because at first I'm thinking like, did he just possess a body or something, or he just went back in time? I'm assuming he just went back in time, and he was found and brought into this hospital, and he briefly forgot who he was until all the memories come flowing back, and why he's there. But then during the present day, Lilandra is being talked to by the not talked to by the Watchers, but because she's a alien psychic herself, and the Watchers rarely, it's not even just Uatu, it's just a crew full of Watchers in general, because they only show up in person to people when things are like, when the whole universe or possibly the multiverse are like really are in danger, and they pop up knowing okay, something's really going down, and so now it's like, okay, Charles, things are really getting messed up, okay. And like I said, you get to see like Xavier and Magneto really like tussling with these guys in this bar. It was really cool. But present day Xavier sends out Cable to help, sending his mind, well, not mind, but temporarily, because they they built this kind of machine that can temporarily send Cable back in time to find these guys. He did, and he only had a brief moment to like psychically get inside their head to remind them who they are and why they're there, and then bring them back up to speed, because since they're there, Legion has to be stopped. You have to get a hold of Legion before he does anything to tamper with the past. So it's up to Bishop, Iceman, Psylocke, and Storm. Since they're there, they have to be the ones to stop him. And of course, they arrive too late, and Magneto and Legion are just like blasting at each other, and he's pretty much spoiling everything to Xavier and Magneto. It's like, you're the one that's gonna be like like a horrible person in the future. You're gonna cause rifts between mutant and human. You making it harder for my father. I blame you. All the stuff he's gonna be going through in the future is mainly because of you. Someone take you all out. And of course, young Xavier is like, this kid's he's doing all these atrocities for my name. It's like, because he's like bewildered. This is like surreal to him. And so at the same time, in the past, in another part of the world, Apocalypse is waking up, and it's like, okay, something's going on, so I'm gonna have to enact my plan earlier than I was intending to. We'll see where this is going to, obviously, in a minute, because Legion's already affecting the timeline. But while he has Magneto in the palm of his hand, right before he gonna land like a psychic killing blow, Xavier jumps in the way to protect his friend and takes that blow, killing him, and as a result, completely uproot everything that's happening going forward in the timeline. So everything with all the X-Men was going on in the present day. Hell, even all the way out in like the outer space with the Landra, the Shi'ar Empire, all the stuff that was touched by Xavier and the X-Men is all like gonna be like turned upside down now. So now, in like a whole new timeline, Xavier leaving like a parting words to Magneto. It's like, keep our dream alive, pretty much like, leaving his final dream, the dream worth fighting, the dream worth having is worth fighting for kind of situation. And so Magneto takes that mantra and adopts it. It's kind of like the whole great power comes great responsibility kind of situation. So he takes that mantra because Magneto, in the past, for a moment, he's like, was literally contemplating whether or not, like helping humanity is even worth it or anything like that. So with the death of Xavier, all that got uprooted. And so now he went to his other pathway. So now he set up a base in Wonder Mountain, and he's built his astonishing X-Men, and he's the one that gathered, for the most part, certain X-Men members that we are familiar with. So we got like Storm, Colossus, Jean Grey, we got Wolverine, but he's not going by Wolverine, he's going by Weapon X. We got Iceman. We later see Rogue, who he will eventually has like a relationship with. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are on this team. So this is more of the way Magneto leads a team seems a little bit more, how I would put it, because I was going to say like tactical, but it's just like I don't know, it's just like the way Xavier does it, it seems like, well, it's hard to tell, like there is like a difference, but given how the way they carry themselves is a little bit more, well, I guess Magneto's, a little bit more strict compared to Xavier, because Xavier leaves room for, I don't know, improvisation, I guess, or at least allow them to be a bit of themselves. Like Iceman, normally kind of jokey, where Xavier seems a little bit more tolerant of that, by comparison to Magneto, who's like, okay, cut down the joking crap, let's stay on point kind of situation. And their danger room was a little bit more like, hardcore. So like, it's like, yeah, if you pit like, like Xavier's, X-Men compared to Magneto's type of X-Men, I think Magneto's type of X-Men can easily like, own Xavier's X-Men, because they're a little bit more proficient. I gotta admit, it's like they handle themselves pretty well. But then Apocalypse started making his move. He's setting up his horsemen. He gets certain mutants like Sabretooth to attack this, government facilities housing these nuclear warheads. Thinking, and Sabretooth thinks like, oh, we're just gonna, take it, hold the whole world hostage kind of situation. But he ain't thinking he's gonna actually use them. And of course, Sabretooth is like, even like he's like, what the hell? Like, you wasn't supposed to actually use these things. And it's like, oh well, you're not a part of the plan, then you're part of the problem. And they like, execute Sabretooth. It's like, I don't know how you're gonna execute the guy who can heal, but whatever. And of course, at the same time, while Magneto deploys some of his X-Men to go deal with that, Rogue, who's being like the newest member, stays behind with Scarlet Witch to hold down the fort with all the younger X-Men, and they get assaulted by a guy named Nemesis, who will later be known as Holocaust, because, you know, after a fight, he will later become this, like, you know, energy being inside some kind of robotic thing. But he ends up, you know, getting to this massive fight between these two women, and he loses and has to escape, but it also results in the death of Scarlet Witch. And of course, like, you know, you see, like, you know, Wolverine and, or Weapon X and Sabretooth going toe to toe with each other. And of course, Wolverine, I was gonna call him Wolverine because I keep forgetting, like, he's known as Weapon X here, but he kills Sabretooth, and it's like, you know, but he comes back later. Clearly that didn't stick, obviously. It's like, dealing with, you know, people with super healing abilities, the best way to deal with them is to cut off their head and separate it, you know, separate it from the body altogether. It's the only way to deal with that, because they will come back. And of course, Apocalypse, you know, rain fire, just do it on the X-Men. Of course, thanks to the team, this all, or at least Xavier, it all gets blocked. Well, Apocalypse makes his escape. And of course, when they get back, it's all like, you know, sad, because the fact that, you know, he lost a daughter in this whole rigmarole. But then, fast forward a few years later, the world is, at least in America, but mostly the world is in complete chaos, essentially, because Magneto and his team wasn't really equipped or prepared to dealing with Apocalypse, and he ended up conquering North America. And currently right now, between the rest of humanity and other parts of the world, is like a shaky ground of mutual assured destruction kind of situation. But of course, Apocalypse is like a full believer of survival of the fittest, and he eventually recruits people like Hank McCoy, who will be Dark Beast in this timeline, which will be the same Dark Beast who shows up in like the present correct timeline in the future that, you know, the X-Men have to deal with for a while moving forward in like the later 90s for a little while, at least up until the point of the the last X-Men event that I just talked about on the channel. He recruits like Sinister, who, of course, his obsession with mutant genetics and his obsession with the Summers family, he, you know, gets Scott and Alex, who become his like loyal right hands, well, more so Scott, which caused animosity between those, between the brothers. Well, mostly Alex cannot stand his brother because he seems like he's more favored over him, which grows this animosity and hatred. If you want to know what happened to all the like other superheroes and like the Avengers and all that stuff, all that get, you know, messed up. You know, the Avengers never was formed. the Fantastic Four, never really went out into space. All that stuff got completely upended when Apocalypse starts, raining hell over the U.S. So things that's supposed to happen never got off the ground because humanity has to deal with this, essentially a mutant dictator who has, wants a full culling for the most part of humans, except for those who willing to betray their own human species to become like mutant, not mutant, just cybernetic freaks under the rule of Apocalypse. So like it's a nightmare pretty much. But certain people from like Marvel heroes that you know, I will show them. They will show up, on the tail end of things. But anyway, most the mutant class for the most part has been on like a higher station. They're the upper class. Oh, yeah, I remember the event. The Days of Future Past. That was the one I was thinking of. I couldn't think of the name right away. So, Alex and Scott are part of this kind of like elite team. They call it like prelates. I'm not sure why they call it like a prelates, but just think of like some kind of elite force for Apocalypse. Certain recognizable mutants that we're familiar with are part of that. And of course, this Dark Beast is a sadistic mad scientist, essentially. And, he's called the Beast because he's like, likes messing around with, mutants are just animals, people, anybody he can like find any type of usefulness to experiment on for whatever kind of research he's interested in, or to make better, or whatever he finds fascinating, or whatever like Sinister or Apocalypse need from him, kind of thing. Then a spaceship crash lands on Earth, and it turns out to be Alex and Scott's father, who meets up with Robbie Robinson. And because if you're familiar, his father, their father was adopted when they was young kids, and him and his wife, but he was a part of the Starjammers for a while. And of course, now all that kind of turned on his head at this point. He asked, like, okay, what's going on? What happened to the Earth? And of course, Robbie broke it down to him. But Robbie ends up getting killed by the dad. We'll see later why, after Sinister realized, what's going on. He wanted to make sure that, because he first was captured, but he made an escape from Sinister and Beast's little laboratory. So Scott and Alex chase after him, find him, realize, oh, that's our dad. And they later gets like attacked by these rogue band of like mutant scoundrels or whatever like that. And we later see like a dead Colleen Wing and a grieving Misty Knight. But those they find like dead bodies. Scott finds all these dead bodies, and it's like, okay, well, how do these bodies end up like this? And then it turns out that their dad has been experimented on in space by, he's been affected by the Brood. And most of the Shi'ar got, taken over by the Brood. That's where he got captured and he was infected. The mom never survived, but he managed to stay off the infection long enough so he can make it home, so he can just see his kids one last time, kind of situation. And that's why he ended up accidentally killing Robbie, and why Sinister is adamant on trying to find this guy, because he didn't want Scott and Alex to see their father like this, because in his twisted way he cares for them. And so now the brothers have to fight off their father and all the other infected people that he attacked. They started rising from the dead, including Colleen Wing, who ends up, her and Misty Knight end up killing each other on that, fighting each other off. And Scott having to do the deed and kill his father, who he just reconnected with. And by the way, if you're curious about why Scott only has that one eye thing, he's actually now a little Cyclops, it's because his left eye got injured by Wolverine, because Jean was captured, because like some mutants were captured by who wasn't kowtowing to Apocalypse rule. Some of them ended up getting captured and put in pens essentially, and Jean was one of those, thanks to Weapon X trying to bust her out. No thanks to Magneto, because he thought it would probably be too dangerous. A fight between these two guys happened. It resulted in Wolverine getting his left arm, or at least left hand, completely severed. While at the same time, Scott completely lost his left eye. 1 second. Okay, that's that one. Make some adjustments here. Okay. So we see like now it's kind of, the world at this point kind of feels like The Walking Dead essentially, except without the whole zombie stuff. It's just like everything's kind of dystopian future. You got certain villains that we recognize, like Azorban and Diablo. Diablo being like a Fantastic Four villain, which I kind of feel like, oh man, we can do something with somebody Diablo who's like an alchemist kind of situation. But they're sent to kill forgot his doggone name, just keep calling Senator Kelly, who in this one, doesn't hate mutants and sees like, you know, Apocalypse rule is just like, you know, man, it's like, you know, humans and mutants to be working together kind of situation. This is kind of but he's speaking out against Apocalypse, which isn't a good idea, hazard to your health. So Magneto and his team saves Kelly from Absorbing Man and Diablo. And so now they, you know, they go to at least a couple of hideouts. The first one being the former farm of Sam Guthrie's family, you know, Cannonball. Matter of fact, I didn't even know Cannonball had siblings. He has him and his sister works under Scott and Alex as, you know, not prelates, but kind of like, you know, wardens of the pen to keep, like, you know, all the other mutants that doesn't submit to Apocalypse. And there's like a younger sister that we'll see later, but, you know, kind of touch on a bit, but more fight on the side of Magneto in like a different kind of mission. Anyway, so certain parts of the US is like there's cullings. It's like a lot, like humanity is pretty much like running scarce. They're starting to become an endangered species at a certain point because because of Apocalypse takeover. You see certain Sentinels and they protect humanity and attack mutants, but unless you're wearing some type of device, is something called like a halo or something like that, that keep the Sentinels from attacking you as a mutant when you're trying to help humanity. You don't want to sit there having to fight off Sentinel and Apocalypse's forces at the same time. That kind of helps. So essentially, Magneto and the X-Men are using like the Sentinels as a way to, at least a few Sentinels that we do see, as backup forces in order to aid in their efforts to help humanity. But there's time to time they feel like they're fighting like a losing battle. They're only always one step behind Apocalypse, and the place is just like a darn near a crater at a certain point, except from certain spots. Like there's this like nightclub called Heaven being run by Angel, you know, Worthington III, who's pretty much like the inside man if you want to know what's going on or make certain moves, or you want to speak to certain people that you can't directly get to. He can facilitate that meetup kind of situation. He's the middleman kind of guy, but he doesn't take sides. He's supposed to be like neutral ground kind of thing in this world. So yeah, of course now like Sabretooth is fighting on the side of, you know, Magneto. But you also get Morph, Nightcrawler, who goes by Kurt Darkholm. He fully embraced his the name of his mom, and also he's the whole religious aspect. He completely, like, you know, he never went down that route, and he's a little bit more like ruthless. I mean, a lot of them are pretty ruthless in this world. I guess they have to be, but there's certain things that Nightcrawler does I never expect Nightcrawler to do. It's like, this is like darn near something like I expect from like Sabretooth. We get Blink, who's a teleporter. We get like Banshee, Rogue, Storm, Iceman, who pretty much like only time anytime Iceman is seen, he's like always fully iced, and he almost like a genie, an ice genie, because he never goes back to his human form. He is all ice for some reason. I guess it helps because he always can reform himself, but it's never fully explained as to why he is that way. But while taking on Apocalypse's Horseman Death, Magneto and X-Men gets captured, except for Blink, who's trying to figure out how to help free her team. She bumps into Cyclops, who is already he believes in Sinister, but he sees certain things. It's like he just not down for. I guess in most cases, in whatever kind of timeline, Scott always has a good nature, moral ground, and from time to time, you see him help certain mutants escape, like Jean and Blink. He doesn't even like Death at all, and he already sees him as a potential person who might usurp Sinister and Apocalypse. So it's like, no, I gotta get rid of this guy because he's even more sadistic than either one of these guys. So it was mutually beneficial for them to stop Death. So he helps facilitate the X-Men released, and Magneto sees like a potential ally in Scott, more than likely. But they won't interact again until like the tail end of this adventure. Oh, we also got Gambit involved here. And of course, and Colossus as well. But Jean and Wolverine, who are together here, because I guess without the whole Cyclops situation, there's more room for them, their relationship to actually flourish here. Since Wolverine managed to help free Jean, he had it up to here with the way Magneto is leading the team, and the fact that he was so easily willing to let Jean rot because he didn't think it was like a good idea to risk capture or the deaths of the team in order to help release one member. I guess Magneto's a little bit more practical. So Weapon X is like, fine. It's like, we just quit the team. So him and Jean make their way to London, whereas the central hub of a lot of other human forces, where they mount a kind of like a defense perimeter against like Apocalypse, and make it like a plan, because there's supposed to be some kind of like human like pact thing where Apocalypse has a stronghold in America, and he's promised not to encroach on any other part of the world, even though we all know it's Cap. They know it's Cap, but it's the best they can do because they still need a I mean, of course they got like Sentinels and potential nukes, but it's just like excuse me, it's just like, okay, mutually assured destruction. No side has like a potential one up over the other just yet. So then of course Gambit, who always had a thing for Rogue, but her and Magneto spark up a relationship, which caused Gambit to quit the team because he's butthurt. He thought like, oh, Magneto's my friend. I didn't think like he would backstab me like this, knowing how I feel about Rogue. But it's just like, I don't know, it's just like he was extremely butthurt. And then of course Rogue and Magneto end up having like a child, even though hard to say how that was even feasible given her powers, unless you had like those inhibitor power dampeners kind of thing, so that way they can physically embrace, because Magneto normally has to put like a small barrier over his skin so he can actually hold Rogue intimately. But given the fact that how is she able to give birth, given the fact that as soon as like, you know, she can't make skin on skin contact with her own baby and possibly breastfeed. I'm thinking too much into it. You know what I'm getting at. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know how that is even feasible, but whatever. So they had this young boy and they named him Charles. And of course, before Gambit leaves, they get, you know, attacked by this guy who calls himself Wolverine. But Gambit is one to actually take out this guy for good before he ends up just leaving, and he beat up his own team called the Externals. You know, has members like Jubilee and a couple of people I don't remember. But they're from like part of X Factor. But then at one point, Magneto and the X-Men gets bumps into a mysterious figure, and he goes by Bishop. And Bishop, his mind is a little bit scrambled because he's from like, maybe because Bishop originally is from a different timeline that of course we know the story that, you know, he went back in time to prevent, you know, Xavier from being murdered, or at least, you know, not Xavier, but somebody's gonna kill Senator Kelly, and the X-Men gonna get blamed, and we gotta find a traitor, that kind of thing. It comes like a different timeline altogether. But then he stays into the present timeline and becomes a member of the X-Men. And after this whole timey-wimey BS with Legion, that's probably why somehow he's still here in this other timeline and not changed or sent back into his, you know, or at least erased altogether because things are completely different. I guess it will explain why his mind is a little jumbled, because he can't fully remember everything, but he knows that, you know, he sees Magneto as like, he calls him like a murderer. It's your fault kind of thing, even though it's like, why you calling him a murderer? He's not the one who killed Xavier, it was his son. But his mind's all jumbled up anyway, so he can't perfectly recall everything, but he knows that this is not a right timeline. I'm coming on a timeline where Xavier had lived, and he's one that formed the X-Men. All this Apocalypse, all this stuff, this should not exist. This is all this stuff is got completely messed up. And of course, none of them believe him, and they think he's just like a crazy dude. So, but I don't know, Magneto seems a little bit more inclined to believe him. I guess he kind of wants to believe him because he misses his friend so much. It was always on his mind. But the fact that, like, you know, is it possible that, you know, we're not from a proper, this is not a proper timeline? Something got messed up in the past? Of course, it would be helpful to have Jean on deck to get inside his head. But then we can flip-flopping from, you know, different people's stories here, and as I said, it kind of feels like The Walking Dead, because like we go from different people and their own story beats and stuff like that, in this kind of post-apocalyptic world. And we see Sinister, well, I wouldn't say he gotten disillusioned. He just never really was fully on board with Apocalypse's rule. He's more of an opportunist, but he knows that at some point the chickens will come home to roost with Apocalypse, because there's nothing to gain with him completely taking over and calling all of humanity, and survival of the fittest mindset. He's not like, that's not his bag. But and him like wiping anybody he perceives weak or not useful anymore at a whim, it's like, okay, he set up sort of way to like, okay, I gotta dip secretly. So that's where like he pseudo leaves Scott in charge, but not let anybody know what's up, because deserters get killed immediately. They get to see like these wide-eyed, dopey young boy Charles. And of course, you know, Rogue is a little upset because she can't embrace her child fully without wearing gloves or clothes, because skin on skin contact is, you know, pretty hazardous on, you know, to a certain degree. Even just like a small tap on a person, it's like, in certain depictions kind of feels like, you know, getting like a mild shock kind of situation. So imagine fully like grasping a person. So we check back in with, you know, Logan and Jean, who shows up in London with Moira MacTaggert and Captain Britain. Of course, he's not going by Captain Britain. And then we see like Emma Frost, who for some reason got a shape, part of her head is shaved, and maybe it's because of some kind of experimentation for Apocalypse or something like that. I'm not sure, but I guess it kind of it might have ruined her psychic abilities, maybe. I don't know, because we never see her use her psychic powers, but I guess that would explain why she has the kind of like shaved off part of her head for some reason. But Sinister has been low-key feeding certain information to Logan and Jean to send to this human leader organization group in London, pretty much informing them from the inside that Apocalypse is never going to honor this pact. He's mounted like a forest, blah, 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 blah. So that way they can actually properly prepare all this other stuff. Then Magneto takes Bishop to meet pretty much means some kind of like not an oracle, but some kind of entity here, and essentially it's kind of starting to his, you know, what he's talking about is kind of a little bit more believable by the second. But most psychics have been killed off, and all time travelers have been, you know, killed off, because Apocalypse doesn't want any potential threat to his rule to, you know, mess things up. So people like that, they get it, you know, even if they believe in Apocalypse, he doesn't want any potential threat to his rule. Even if they don't go back in time to stop Apocalypse, they don't want him to, like, you know, take over or wherever like that. It's like, I can't have you ruining things. This sets up a three-pronged plan Magneto set up to potentially, because he got too much stuff like he has to contend with, but he sees like an opportunity. If there is an opportunity to fix this, he want to at least, you know, leave it on the table, because he this is not a world that he want to raise his son in, even though the potentiality of his son not existing is like always on his mind. He has to weigh that against the fact that, like, what kind of world would he live in under Apocalypse's rule? It's like, you know, a father has to weigh that, you know, side to side, and it's like, okay, lesser of two evils. So he relays, you know, his plan to Nightcrawler, where he needs to reach out to his mom to go visit this sanctuary run by Destiny, who's alive in this timeline. And he needs, and like, is a three-pronged thing. He sends out Colossus and Kitty to go, who's married in this timeline, go out to find Illyana, because, you know, of course we know she has like a budding mutation and everything like that. You need, you know, Illyana, who's trapped by this creature called the Sugar Man. Is just like a, you know, kind of like, not impish, but like this grotesque thing. Like, he's just like, you know, like an evil looking Pac-Man kind of dude. Yeah, find Illyana, Destiny, and there's another thing that he has, like a third thing. It'll come to me, but it's a three-pronged thing he has to do in order to seize the opportunity to send Bishop back in order to correct things, because he was the only one that actually can pull this off. He needs to be the one to be sent back, since he doesn't come from this particular timeline. So we follow this girl named Switchback, who is traveling to Avalon, this sanctuary run by, who's like, it's, matter of fact, it's on the Savage Lands, is part of Antarctica, and she meet up with the monk Cain Marko, the Juggernaut, who now is like a complete pacifist after what went down. At some point, he sees what he did previously was wrong, and he's sworn off violence and everything like that, and he's super devout with that. It's like, I refuse to you know, seek violence kind of thing. He just refused to go down that path, because he feels like, once I go down that route, I'll be my old self again, and I don't want to be that guy anymore, kind of thing. Nightcrawler eventually meets up with John Proudstar, who, from what you recall from the Giant Size X-Men, was one of the it was like the second or third wave of X-Men roster, and he wouldn't, you know, he has information on how to get in contact, or at least get like except like a ride to get himself close to you know, like a meetup with Raven, so that way she could take them the rest of the way to Avalon. Of course, him and Proudstar gets into it because Mystique has been not robbing, but it's like a toll troll kind of situation where it's like people want to get to Avalon. Well, uh, you got to provide like a watch or whatever valuable you have, so that way Mystique could have some kind of. It's like I don't know what you need money for in this kind of world, but I guess pay for your troubles kind of thing, which kind of like bothers Kurt. But he didn't like the idea that like because he didn't want to believe Proudstar, and the fact that he like teleported a couple of Proudstar's fingers off of his hands because he like dared to point at him. I was like, that's what I'm saying. Like Nightcrawler's not acting like Nightcrawler, but they were spied on by this woman. I was like, hold on, what is it? Danielle. She works for Apocalypse and has her team up with this woman named Damask, who's pretty much like a I don't know, some kind of hunter, who's very crazy, a hunter type of chick, who's kind of has like a furry type of obsession with Kurt. You see her like making out with him when she meets up with him in Avalon, but Apocalypse has these two ladies team up with Deadpool here, called like he's not called Deadpool, it's like crap, what do you call it, Dead Wade, crap, because Deadpool's not acting like Deadpool here. He's seems like completely out of it, because he's been like messed with by Apocalypse too much, and now like you think his mind is all over the place. Before, he's really like completely like just matter of fact, Danielle kept cutting into him and doesn't understand the fact that, because Damask had to point out like she does not like you, Wade. As a matter of fact, Danielle gets killed immediately by Damask because the fact that she was annoying her. Yeah, Dead Man Wade. That's what he was called. Yeah, I knew it was like I had that right. Dead Man Wade. So these three are tasked to follow Nightcrawler, find Avalon, and completely like destroy it. Which Destiny sees like a prophecy of Avalon being put to flames. 1 second. Sorry. Take care of sniffles. So, well, that's going on. Oh, that's the third prong thing I was telling you about. Magneto tasks Gambit and his externals to go, because after they figure out about what's going on in space, they need the M'Kraan crystal. Oh, 1 second. Yeah. they need the Macran crystal to enact his plan in order to combine, use Destiny's, powers with the Macran crystal in order to facilitate Illyana to, in combination to create this kind of doorway into the past, because they don't have any natural born mutants with time travel powers. So they have to cobble together a macabre way of time travel. They don't even have somebody like Reed Richards or anybody like that to build a time machine, which would take too long to accomplish. And even then, there's testing and it's not exact science. So this is probably like, the more DIY-ish way of trying to get that accomplished. So he has because matter of fact, a couple of these comics I actually own and didn't even realize it was part of this whole Age of Apocalypse storyline. There's like an externals comic I have, and there's like a prologue after the event has finished that I own as well, not realizing it's part of the whole Age of Apocalypse storyline. After I went through all this, it's like, oh my god, I didn't realize that was a part of this. That was crazy. So they end up going to this little secret bunker, but again, followed by one of Apocalypse man named Richter, who cause earthquake level vibrations, and so they need Lyla to unlock her mutant ability, which is kind of teleporting. Essentially, there's a lot of teleporters that's utilized throughout this event, and they need to get in space, which they eventually do. But they end up getting Richter dragged through as well, which they end up on the planet where they meet up with Gladiator and other remnants of the Shi'ar people. And because of the death of Xavier, way before he had a chance to meet with Lilandra, because he was instrumental, along with Jean Grey, of, because you look at the Dark Phoenix saga, I was like, oh my god, Jean went completely bonkers, but before she even went bonkers, she used the Phoenix powers to heal the Macran crystal, especially after Lilandra's brother, Damon, or I think it's Damon. I forgot her brother's name because he's crazy. He tried to utilize the power in order to take over the galaxy, but without Xavier there, who sparked up that kind of kinship with her later in the future, and the fact that he wasn't there to bring the X-Men along to help stop her brother, she ends up getting killed by him. He takes over. He has no control of the crystal, which kind of cause it to further fracture, and it causes this kind of like a blink kind of thing where random Shi'ar people gets turned to crystal or something like that. So it's just like, you'd think out in space you'd probably be a little more safer because planet Earth is crap. So now we get back to planet Earth here, where in London, we see the council members, the human council members, try to formulate a plan, a counterattack, or at least try to evacuate as much of the people as possible, because their ultimate goal is trying to evacuate most of the human population off world. Because if their plan of taking out Apocalypse doesn't exceed, because they want to essentially want to drop nukes on the North America in order to hopefully eradicate Apocalypse, or at the very least all his, forces, uh they want to be able to, like, okay, even though it's like they're still humans in the US, but it's just like needs of the many kind of situation, because right now he's only secluded on the US. Everybody else in the other parts of the world are like in constant fear of him slowly encroaching on other countries. Because that's what he want to build towards to, because he want his rule to be absolute. Then, like, we get Magma showing up, and she's part of Apocalypse's forces, but Wolverine sneaks up behind her and guts her in the back, which is kind of crazy because she was one of the youngest members of the X-Men in the proper timeline. It's kind of seems like, wow, stuff that we see, like stuff we're not used to seeing from certain people that we're used to knowing to being good guys. Is because it shows like by that slight change in history can uproot everybody. We get to see Copycat, Deadpool's, former ex-girlfriend, and she and a couple of Apocalypse's forces take on Quicksilver and a couple of his, slight band of team as they're trying to evacuate certain people in Maine or something. I forgot which part of the U.S. because they, Magneto's team gets separated in 3 parts. Storm sends out the Sentinels to take out one of Apocalypse's way stations on the seaboard. I guess it helps, like, when the human councils start sending their Zeppelins, pretty much like their air forces, over the seas, over to the U.S. They don't want Apocalypse picking up on that early and taking them all down. So they try to make sure, like, okay, we send out these small little battle points here and there to help with the larger scale war. As a matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, man, what would a storyline would be if David actually succeeded in killing Magneto? That would be a little more interesting. I mean, so far it's like this is like a pretty epic story, but man, I'm just too curious. It's like, okay, how? Because of course there's always this whole thing was like, how peaceful would it be without Magneto? Because say what you will about Magneto, there's certain things he was involved in that was kind of integral in certain events that needed him. And so taking him off the board early in life would kind of mess certain things up too. So good or bad, it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life kind of situation. Whatever mistakes you feel like you made, or like how crappy you feel, whatever like that, it's every life is important to a level. It's like you take anybody off the board will uproot in a domino effect in the present day. So how peaceful would a world be without Magneto? Realistically, there's going to be some kind of problem. We see a couple of escapees, including Pyro from the pens that Scott and Alex had to stop, and ultimately, of course, Scott didn't want to, but they kind of leave him with no choice but to take him out. Well, mostly Alex. And of course, we get to see like the Bedlam brothers. If you know about in Deadpool 2 with X-Force, if you see Terry Crews's character named Bedlam, there's a character, actually is named Terry, bald-headed dude. Then you know he had like a brother, but he actually messed with the electrical parts of the machinery, including certain neurons in the person's brain kind of situation. And of course, his brother is able to mess with the hardware of the mechanical stuff. Let's just make it easier. Like Terry is able to mess with the software of certain things, while his brother can mess with the hardware. And of course, then we get we get to see what's inside the Heaven nightclub. It almost feels like Seventh Heaven in Final Fantasy. It's kind of funny. Now, I've just thought about that right now. It kind of feels like Seventh Heaven. And you see crap, what's his name? Is anti-mutant crap. This like crap, I forgot the word for it, but it's like the very like like down with all mutants type of racist guy that we're familiar with. I forgot his doggone name. Henry Gyrick. That was still a dick even in this timeline, but even more so because he doesn't have that level of support like in the main timeline. Now he's like a super fascist. That's the word, super fascist, even in this timeline. But now it's like it seems like he's just by himself, because like why he shows up in like this one man solo mission. It's like what was his plan here? He just shows up in his nightclub planning to shoot it up, but it's like it's a room full of superpowered beings that can easily handle you. Even like the Bedlam brothers, they just mess with his mind, disrupt his gun, and now he's just like captured. It's like, what was your plan here, dude? And of course, you see this lady, because there's a couple of people that work under Angel who feed certain information to either Magneto or the human allied forces behind the scenes of this club. But this human redheaded woman, and no, it's not Mary Jane or anything like that. It's just like a generic redheaded woman who is secretly hooking up with Alex, and who will later become pregnant. But of course, it will be forbidden by Apocalypse that no mutant shall intermingle with a human, kind of thing. And then we took another look at a different, back to Scott, where he helped facilitate the escape of X-Man, was pretty much proto-Cable, essentially. And he makes his escape, and he gets later on picked up by a circus group led by Forge, Cyron, and Toad, who's like helping, who's pretending to be like a traveling circus group, but also secretly helping humans when they can, but discreetly without being found out. And and also that illusionist guy, I forgot his name. We got like the Brute, Mastermind, also Mastermind. And so Forge is pretty much like a pseudo father figure for X-Men. And he has to teach him how to, when and where to properly use his powers. And because X-Men is just like a gung-ho type of dude. And, you know, I guess it's like he's a proto Cable, because Cable is a little more sound mind, practical, tactical, and this is not X-Men at all. But we also meet this woman who they end up helping a bunch of humans on this train from some of the Apocalypse's forces, and she discovers her mutant ability, which is kind of like a silent scream, essentially. What's it called? Like, not siren, something like that. It starts with an S. I forgot what it's called. It doesn't really matter. I'm not even sure if she's like a. I'm pretty sure she's like a. Because it's not Banshee's. I don't know. Could it be Banshee's relative? Siren. Yeah, Theresa Cassidy. Yeah, that's what I knew it had to be her. Yeah, Sonique. That's what it is. Yeah, I was like, they have to be the same person because it only makes sense. You're talking about Sonic, a female girl in Marvel Comics with Sonic powers. She's the only one that like always comes to mind for me. If I know my X-Men, like I think I know my X-Men, besides Banshee, you know, she's the only one with Sonic powers that I can remember. And it's like, yeah, that's Banshee's niece. Uh, no, his father, Sean Cassidy. But I don't know why these two never met up in this story. That's kind of weird. Uh, and of course, she and X-Men spark up a relationship down the line. But then we see Laura Dane, Magneto's daughter, who for some reason doesn't recognize her, and he managed to sneak into the one of the pens in order to liberate a couple of mutants, but we never see those mutants show up again in the future. We never see, like, you know, what they contribute, why these particular ones need to be liberated for some reason, and he had to leave her behind. And it's like, but he doesn't recognize his daughter. But she knows he's her father. I don't know, but the Guthrie siblings notice something going haywire with the tech, and they, you know, notice like, okay, you know, something went wrong. A couple of mutants gone missing, and this girl seems like she saw something, and that's when she gets interrogated by Alex, and soon brought into like, okay, and since she ain't gonna talk, we'll make her talk, bring her to McCoy so he can pretty much torture her for information. Scott eventually sees what's going on. It's like, no, this is not what we do. And besides, Hank didn't Sinister say he's supposed to shut this thing down anyway, so he blasts the equipment to smithereens, and told him like, you know, since like, hey, Sinister, at this point he's not like around, so he essentially is the next one in charge just by hierarchy. So it's like, hey, take her back to her cell. I do not want to repeat myself, and she better not be harmed on the way there. And of course, he eventually, in disguise, sneaks her out and sends her on this kind of essentially like a lifeboat with somebody who sneaks people to safety. But Alex finds out, and it's like, oh, okay, now I can make my move and slowly but surely usurp and kill my brother. Back in London, Copycat and this machine cyborg named Box, I don't know, Box, start attacking people who's trying to make their way to a sanctuary in London where like most of the human population is trying to convene at. But they eventually get stopped. But throughout, and of course, you also see Miracle, Wolverine's, former lover kind of thing, which they briefly acknowledge, but she is part of the human resistance group. But Jean, realizing she needs to, because she doesn't believe in just dropping a nuke on the US without giving like a chance to help people, because it's like, well, Wolverine's like a needs of the many kind of situation. We can't get everybody out, and this is a surefire way in order to deal with Apocalypse and all his cronies in one fell swoop. So we got to sacrifice the US, which Jean doesn't really believe in. So she sneaks on one of the airplanes and takes off back to the US to try to do what she can to help out Magneto and and release as many people that's also independent where she was. And it's like, we got to help those people, especially because they didn't want to fight. They didn't want any part of this war, let alone serve Apocalypse. They deserve to be liberated too. We're not going to sacrifice them. So she wants to help those people out because she's been in that place before. She experiencing it and the horrors behind it. She need to get those people out. Okay. So that's done with that. So back in space, the externals, Gambit and the externals are trying to fight off Gladiator. We all know how much of a powerhouse he is. So, and you got this dude named Guido. I think is how you pronounce it, Guido. This massive, bulky dude. Yes. I don't know, just misspelling his name. Cause I swear, it's like I've seen this dude pop up tons of times here and there. As is, do not how you pronounce this thing. Let's go with like externals. Well, he was on the X Force though. Yeah, he also goes by Strong Guy, I guess. Mm, Strong Guy. Okay. Yeah, what this guy can do? I'm just too curious. Kinetic energy absorption. Strong Guy has the ability to absorb kinetic energy and use it to enhance his physical strength to above uh, normal limits. However, he cannot store the energy he absorbed for very long. As a rule, he must expend it within 90 seconds to prevent the enormous amounts of energy from permanently distorting his body. He is in constant pain from the existing distortion, although he hides it well, traditionally playing the role of team comedian to distract himself. Uh, can lift approximately 50 tons. Uh, and depending on how much he absorbs, he can get up to 100 tons. He had went toe to toe with the Red Hulk for a lengthy period. Um, he's a stand-up comedian. Weaknesses: he got a heart condition. So yeah, because I've seen this guy from time to time. He always back in the night, he's always looked kind of dopey for some reason. I think they kind of streamlined him in the past handful of years. Was I seen him in the background a bit, but man, he in the '90s he looks super dopey, just like cartoonishly big. So anyway, uh, the externals get the lowdown about the McCrane crystal. They need to get a shard of that, so that's where they need to uh, locate it and get a piece of that. While Richter is convincing Gladiator and his people in order to uh, capture uh, the externals and stop them their plans. Hold on a second. Uh, 1 second. 1 second. Okay, so now we going back to Earth with Nightcrawler, who managed to secure passes on a submarine with a bunch of other people making their way to Avalon for a potential sanctuary. But the sub's getting like some mechanical trouble because the air supply is dropping and the hatch isn't lifting on their side of things. So unfortunately, the ship's captain have to make a emergency, rise to the surface, even though they want to make sure they want to get out of the radar of Apocalypse forces that's securing certain borders on the oceans and whatnot. They want to get out of their line of possible sight, even though they're still being followed by obviously the Mask and Dead Wade and just those two, because Danielle's dead at this point. But then get picked up by Calypso, who is in the proper timeline the leader of the Morlocks and rival of Storm. And she convinced, like, oh, I got a ship, don't worry, I'll take it the rest of the way. I know you guys, got your sub is, is on pins and needles right now, so we'll take them the rest of the way. But Nightcrawler, who pretty much teleported his butt out of there, is like kind of thinking he's gonna leave. He's feeling bad, but it's like, I got a mission that's more important. So it's like, I'm gonna have to leave these poor fools behind. Which is kind of like, oof, wow. But Calypso actually turns out to be just a straight up pirate, not only taking whatever valuables that these people have, but leaving them in like a lower deck where it's filling up with water and drown those people, which infuriates Nightcrawler, who's pretty much hired away because he didn't want to reveal himself, because he on like a kind of like a secret mission kind of situation. He didn't know these people like that. He doesn't know Calypso like that, so he's remaining in the background until he gets to where he needs to go. But the fact that he's leaving these women, leaving those people to drown, and despite Nightcrawler's best efforts to like lift the hatch himself, it was pretty much sealed shut. And so it's pretty much like almost like a horror show at this point, where Nightcrawler is pretty much like a slasher, because he got these cutlasses, and he's a swashbuckler. He pretty much like a horror slasher movie monster right now. And he's pretty much like murking Calypso's crewmen, which is just down to these two, where until Mystique shows up in the nick of time and kills her and leaves her body to the fishes, same way as she left all those poor souls. And she left like mountains of bodies to like a shore of an island or something like that. This is like a mountain of corpses. This is crazy. Yeah, it's just like, God, it is horrific. And sometimes she got this kind of large freaking helicopter, like she's freaking Black Widow. So eventually Magneto shows up back, make a new HQ at the Xavier's home, which has never been converted into the X mansion that we're familiar with. It's just like a normal mansion. So it's pretty much in like a dead zone, so nobody would think to look there. But eventually, Apocalypse found out and then decided to personally go there to deal with Magneto, which is only Magneto, his son, and Bishop being there, while everybody else is on their separate missions. And of course, we got Sabretooth finally want to take it, go toe to toe with Holocaust, and end his just carnage, no pun intended. And he got the mutant Wild Child, which in this case he's literally more wild than child now in this day and age. He's like now it's like the X-Men's pet, more so than like a human, quote unquote human being. And only Sabretooth is actually able to communicate with him, because Wild Child communicates more snarls and growls rather than like human speak. Possibly because of some kind of apocalypse, experimentation or something like that, or some kind of torture where he's kind of lost a bit of his humanity or something like that. But Holocaust pretty much let it slip about what was this? It's like, let me get this straight. The processing plant, the one with what fuels all your infinites, is right up the road. Yeah, so it's like, he's trying to free, because sometimes these people, people who in these factories where like people being throw in this kind of like pea soup, essentially, for lack of a better word, and process to fuel other machinations by Magneto. They want to put a stop to these factories too, like really halt any progress on apocalypse side of things. So he sends out Wild Child to go find the rest of the X-Men to relay the message, while Sabretooth takes on Holocaust, which he ultimately fails in the fight. But Wild Child managed to relay the message to Rogue, who had to, because Wild Child couldn't really communicate, but knows what Rogue can do, so he licks Rogue's face in order to have her absorb not just his powers but his memories, so that way she knows what he knows, so that way they can put a stop to those factories. And then of course we get Colossus and Shadowcat, and Shadowcat really dressed like I won't say stereotypical, but like a very old school way of like a Russian old school woman would have dressed back in the 40s. If you look at those old timey photographs of nomads, or Jewish people, because she is Jewish, would have dressed, it kind of reminiscent of something like that, like I see in like those old pictures and books and whatnot that I read growing up. And I was like, wow, she really dressing the part. I don't know. It just reminds me of that. I was like, immediately, because I know she's Jewish, but it's like, man, she dressed like she's like in the 1940s or some old lady for some reason. But anyway, they mounted like a breakout in order to get Illyana out of the Sugar Man's factory, which his name sounds so wrong in every stretch of the imagination. I hate even using that freaking Sugar Man. It sounds so dirty. Anyway, so eventually, this part of the story is kind of boring to me, honestly, when I was reading through this. There's certain people's POVs that you pop from one end to another, to another, to another. This one was probably my least favorite. I really wish they kind of cut this down to a minimum, because honestly, I really didn't, I would say I couldn't track it, but I just I got bored reading through halfway through this stuff. Long story short, he manages to uh get his sister out, but two of the people that he taught in the school, Magneto school, like Sam Guthrie's little sister that didn't fall in line with her older brother and sister in as like a follower of Apocalypse. She and another mutant ends up dying in the process of getting the sister out, which really messes with Colossus. He feels like he failed his students, but he goes really off the rails when we figure out what they really need. It's not like it wasn't. He was clued in on what they need the sister for, but then he just like, for some reason, like gotten completely bonkers. Like, Illyana, no, I love my sister. Like is like Illyana completely blinded by his sister. And it's like, I don't know, maybe just the whole ordeal with like trauma, because obviously a lot of these characters going through some serious trauma through this age of Apocalypse, essentially. So his humans pretty much lost it. We'll get into that once we get to it, but we'll see how. I'll tell you soon how far he goes. But anyway, yeah, this is the sister and the other partner. They end up like seemingly killing like the Sugar Man, but eventually, after this whole essentially tie-in, they don't make it out. And then we go back to the X-Men, and then of course Sinister, under the guise of another being, he just calls himself Essex, going by his normal name, and him and Force are butting heads on how to essentially teach X-Men on how to, or Nate Gray, how to utilize his powers, and but I don't know, it just, Force seems like practical but very coddling, but S is trying to like get him to embrace, because he knows that X-Men is potentially powerful enough to go toe to toe with Apocalypse, but Forge doesn't see him ready yet. But they go to this factory, one of the factories that's supposed to be shut down, but they see them like utilizing it, because some of these factories are supposed to pretty much break down human corpses to extract some kind of enzyme to fuel certain things, tools or machinery to help out with mutants in some capacity or something like that. But it's supposed to be shut down because it didn't produce the results that they was hoping for. But Nate Gray takes it all down, which every time he uses powers sends off a beacon, which the Shadow King picks up. If you remember the Shadow King, was instrumental in trying to take over Africa and try to possess Storm a couple of times, and thanks to Xavier, he managed to banish him into a pocket dimension. But since Xavier never got the chance to do it, Apocalypse managed to capture him and use him as like a it's kind of like that witch in that old Disney movie was like Sleeping Beauty, like mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all kind of thing. He's kind of like that, faceless, or not faceless, but like a face in that mirror, but it's more so like a jar, and use them as like a torture device in order to get information out of somebody's head. If there's any psychics that Apocalypse want to use, he want to use this thing. Also, speaking of psychics, thanks to McCoy, in order to get these mutants that are in these pens to be subdued, they birth telekinetic brains from scratch in these jars in this separate room in order to mentally sedate any captured mutants in the pens to keep any potential breakouts from happening. Even though it's not foolproof, because there's always like a few outliers that manage to break out, it's still it's like at least 98% like a success rate. And this is where, like, you know, they figure out like what's going on with Holocaust's plan and everything like that. Of course, Jean managed to show up on America's soil, break into Apocalypse's citadel, but ends up getting ambushed by Alex, who sends her to Hank McCoy in order to essentially torture her, but not yet. He wants to get Scott in on this. So now that the jig is up and Alex busted him on like betraying all that is Apocalypse, so he strings up Scott along with Jean in hopes for Hank to experiment on him. But Jean secretly tampered with her headpiece in order to dislodge it so she can have full access to her telekinesis. She lifts Cyclops' visor in order for him to utilize his power to blast Hank away so they can make their escape in order to help release all the captured mutants, which they all start running out. It's like, and you get to see like, Bullseye of all people, because it's like, you see in like a text box, Bullseye with a weapon in hands, like leading the charge, like, down with Apocalypse. It's like, and it's like it starts liberating everybody. It's like Bullseye of all people. Then Apocalypse shows up at Xavier's mansion, and despite Magneto and Bishop's best efforts, they are not strong enough to take on Apocalypse by themselves. So they end up getting captured. Magneto goes to Apocalypse Citadel, while Bishop goes to a different facility being run by Jamie Madrox, the multiple man. I'm pretty sure they call him multiple man, where his because the Prime multiple man, like the Prime James Jamie is was captured, tortured, and kept safe in like a separate room, while his duplicates are brainwashed and utilized as like a cult to release Shadow Man to extract information from this Bishop person and sees like what because I think Shadow Man notices some kind of anomaly. Somebody notices some kind of anomaly. I think it was a Shadow Man or Shadow King, whatever you call him. And they couldn't get everything, but again, bits and pieces from Bishop's mind before Bishop managed to use his force of will to cast him out, and notices that our timeline ain't the proper timeline. Something has changed, and so now Apocalypse gets hip to the idea of what uh uh what Magneto is planning on doing. But of course, if you're curious about what happens to the baby, there's like this robotic nanny that keeps the baby safe and attacks a guy who's trying to get at the baby, but of course the baby's safe, all the other stuff. Yeah, this is where, like, you know, Shadow King extracts like enough information as he could before being cast out. So we go back to Nightcrawler, and him and Mystique ends up, after he chewed her out about you know, taking what little that these people have in order to get to this sanctuary in Avalon, and because he's wondering why you're not allowed on Avalon soil, because he's like a self-imposed exile essentially. Because hold on a second. Sorry. Starting to get a little dark, so I'm gonna make sure that it's way too bright. Make sure that things look okay. 1 second here. So he's in like a self-imposed exile because like things I've done are not worthy to set foot on this soil and be with my beloved Destiny. Anyway, once Damask and Dead Wade show up, Damask is just like in awe of the beauty, because she know nothing but like just the post-apocalyptic world, but she sees all this greenery and, you know, the colors, and it's just like the luscious, you know, running water and everything like that. And it's like she sees just this like heaven on earth kind of situation, and knowing what Apocalypse is going to do to it, she just couldn't bring herself to like allow that to happen. So she immediately turns cold, attacks Wade, which stuns him briefly, long enough for Nightcrawler to teleport on top of him, grab hold of his head, and then teleport his head off his body into a separate spot, essentially killing Wade Wilson immediately. And this is no jokey way at all. It's just like, you know, everything's in pain and it's all there is to it kind of situation. Then we get to back to Wolverine, and he shows back up to Wundagore Mountain, which is now being looked over by Carol Danvers, who's not Captain Marvel in this timeline. She never got like that. She never got the chance to become Captain Marvel through the normal way that she would have done it. And she just, her and the Mutant Gateway, the normally an old black guy that makes a portal by teleporting portal. There's a lot of teleporters, you know, this is utilized in this story more so than I've ever seen. I'm thinking about it, it's like, man, they utilizing a lot of various teleporters throughout this various arcs here. So Gateway, he's looking for Gateway in order to bring him to London in order to uses powers to, because he uses like takes any object, I guess, and put on a string and make a twirling motion to open like a bridge between space and time, essentially, to like, their plans getting all the armada from the human resistance in London, and instead of getting all the way overseas in like a extended amount of time to get to the US, it can just be like a quick succession and a surprise attack essentially on Apocalypse. So but they fight off, well, first Logan and Carol fight off these cybernetic hunters essentially, and while trying to get Gateway out, Carol ends up sacrificing herself to stop one of these cyborgs, while Logan and Gateway make their way back to London. So back in space with Gambit and the Externals, like, Sunspot and Jubilee, Lyla, the teleporter, and Strongman, teaming up also with a couple of the Shi'ar members like Deathbird and a couple of her forces in order to get to the M'Kraan crystal. And because he needs to steal a shard, that's what he's a thief, and that's what Magneto needs him for. I need you to be able to steal a shard from this crystal. And once Deathbird and Gambit get inside, and then Lyla, I think, get inside the crystal, Gambit sees this this impish dude who's kind of like the kind of like a watcher for like the M'Kraan crystal, I guess. What's his name? Oh, I forgot his doggone name. It's short, but it's like I can't remember. Feels like I'm blurry. So this guy explains to Gambit that there's been a disruption of the timeline, and your Charles Xavier, his death was the catalyst, and this shocks Gambit. He's like, so Bishop was right this whole time? This timeline wasn't supposed to exist? It's like, no, you gotta go back. You guys gotta go back and fix that, because things are just gonna get potentially worse, and it's gonna start affecting all of many realities because of this. Because I guess because how a lot of the superheroes, especially the X-Men, go time traveling a lot, so their reach and influence that's supposed to have been influenced, you take that away, then it causes like a bigger rift. And that's how I'm taking it, because cause that big diagonal, like, is disruption. This all goes pear-shaped because of this one act. So you can't just take a shard from the M'Kraan crystal. It's kind of like the Soul Stone in the MCU. You gotta like leave something behind, like a soul for a soul kind of situation. But in this case, you gotta leave something or somebody important to you in its place. So Sunspot stays behind before this thing kind of erupts. So Gambit managed to get a shard, and the team, thanks to Lyla, ports it back to Earth. But of course, Richter managed to tag along in that rift, while Gladiator and the other forces, they get turned to crystal because the whole massive blink. This crystal has not been healed by the Phoenix Force when it's supposed to have been healed by the Phoenix Force, but all that was taken away. So now it's caused a part of upheaval in outer space. So now we go back on Earth and we meet up with Gwen Stacy, who did not die in this timeline because I guess Peter Parker never got bit by that spider when he's supposed to. Yeah, he probably would not have something. Even if he did, he probably would have died in the massive chaos of Apocalypse's takeover because he probably would have been way too inexperienced and ineffective and gotten taken out at some point. We never know. That's how I'm theorizing it. I could look it up though. Let's see about like Age of Apocalypse. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so through means unknown, this Spider-Man got his spider powers during a war between mutants and humans, as there was never anyone who led the mutants in peace. He was part of the Avengers, led by Captain America, consisting of Iron Man, Giant Man, Wasp, Black Widow, and Hercules. Together, they battled the X-Men, led by Magneto. During the battle, two more time travelers. Oh, in the comics, here we go. Yeah, no, it's never really explained if he ever gained as a power. So yeah, so it was left undisclosed. Okay, I just had to know because it's kind of confusing. So meet Gwen Stacy, and she's in Wakanda, trying to help out many refugees as possible because I guess throughout like the war with Apocalypse, eventually Wakanda will, for the first time ever, would have fallen by an outside force, and it probably would have been somebody like Apocalypse or somebody on that level. So she's helping out. Not sure how she even got to Wakanda, but because since it's all the way in Africa and she would have been in New York, so who knows. But then we get these mercenaries starting to try to essentially like vultures, no pun intended, trying to pick off what they can from these these poor people. And guess who they are? Norman Osborn. And that's why I said like the whole vulture pun. Norman Osborn, Wilson Fisk, the Owl, and I think it was Arcade, and utilizing certain tech in order to take what they want, essentially. But thanks to Gwen Stacy, along with the intervention of Tony Stark and Hawkeye, they managed to kill these fools, and that's all you see of them. But of course, uh, uh, Iron Man is not like Iron Man here. He still has this like chest plate thing in order to help with his heart and everything like that. But he never got, I guess, got a chance to update his, into like a proper Iron Man suit of armor. Don't know, don't see how or why he couldn't find any proper tech to build something. Given it's not like there's all technology went kaput or anything like that. But they eventually meet up with Victor Von Doom, who never became Doctor Doom, because we also meet up with Susan Storm and Ben Grimm, who never became the Fantastic Four because early on, because they never went up to space, because Reed Richards and Johnny Storm died in the mass war with Apocalypse and mutants and humans and stuff like that. So it's just them two. They never managed to get their powers because they never managed to go up to space. A lot of stuff got upended, and things that's supposed to happen never got a chance to because they got caught up in this war. And I imagine like somebody like Captain America never even got a chance to be defrosted because nobody thinks to look, because nobody is thinking about it, dealing with something like Apocalypse. Also, we meet up with Donald Blake, which I guess there's never a Thor to, well, in the original kind of old school comics where Thor was created just to prove himself to be worthy because he was kind of like a snot-nosed brat in Asgard, Odin bans him and he takes up this persona of feebled Kane user Donald Blake, and then and his hammer is disguised as this cane, and he taps it on the ground and he transforms back to the almighty Thor. And it's kind of like giving like Thor like a dual persona. Eventually they done away with that, but a couple of years ago there was a Thor arc where they brought back Donald Blake, and since he was part of an alter ego of Thor and it was kind of trapped in his mind for so long because they kind of done away with it and became insane. It's a really good story. I'm probably want to talk about that, make a review about that in the future, because it's very interesting, because we pretty much forgot about the whole Donald Blake situation for such a long time, and so he became a crazed lunatic going after any Thor related character that he blames for what happened to him. Anyway, but here I guess that never transpired. There is a Donald Blake, but he never became like there's no Thor persona. There's never like an alter kind of situation. So he's just like a normal doctor that he and Gwen helping these people in Wakanda. So here's like Sue and Ben. And we get to see Daredevil here. He did get his powers, but this mutant named Mikhail, who you remember from my Colossus solo comic solo review, Mikhail is the brother, is he a brother or cousin of Colossus? And of course he's working for Apocalypse, and he turned like Matt Murdock into one of his servants, essentially. Don't worry, eventually he'll have a crisis of faith and everything like that pretty soon. And of course, Mikhail is still going through this whole ploy about, oh, we want this war to end. We don't want to eradicate all humanity. Those are all lies, obviously, but they want to lower a false sense of security, essentially. Of course, then we get to see Grey Hulk. It's not normal Hulk, it's Grey Hulk shows up, and Ben and Sue is tangling with this thing. And of course, he reverts back after his ear gets shot off by Sue. And it's like, and this part was very weird to me. And it's like, you didn't peep the fact that you just shot off the Hulk's ear. Of course, they don't call him the Hulk, but for all intents and purposes, Hulk. And you shot off his ear. He dips away. You track him down. You find this guy who is in tattered clothes and he's missing the same ear. And you don't put two and two together. And it's like, what the heck is going on? Like, why are you wearing the same clothes as that monster and you're missing the ear of the same, that monster? They didn't bother to ask that. They was going by the merry way. Oh, you're just a normal guy. And that part was so confusing. It's just like, for scientists, there's zero deductive skills. Very weird. Okay. Let's say for this batch of slides, we're going to be on the last slide here. One second. So go back to Nate Gray. Apocalypse sends out Domino, being one of his elite enforcers, to try to capture and or eliminate Nate Gray. But she gets overwhelmed by this guy, and she gets taken out very quickly. And of course, Essex finally reveals himself as Sinister, ends up murdering Colossus and Brute. And of course, Nate Gray attacks him and actually manages to mortally wound Sinister. But it's all part of his plan in order to have Nate fully embrace his powers and to his full potential in order to steer him in the direction of Apocalypse. But it results in Sinister's death for he actually dies. Showing, even though he can easily, he's nearly invulnerable, he always can easily come back and, re-heal himself and all this other stuff. But I don't know, there's something about Nate Gray and actually can tip the scales and make that null and void and push Sinister's powers to his limit, and ultimately he falls to his death. Back with Rogue and Morph and the team going after Holocaust, they managed to take him out, but and then rescue Sabretooth. But thanks to Iceman, he saves her from being teleported with him back to Apocalypse Citadel, because she would have easily been overwhelmed and tortured. More than likely in front of Magneto, because he's still captured. And of course, Morph, this whole time, he's like the only kind of like the bit of comedic, because in this kind of like dour story here, you need a bit of comic relief. Sure, Morph isn't all that doggone funny, but you get, you can acknowledge the lighthearted moments, because it's like, it's so serious. And I don't really like the look of Morph here. I kind of like his look in the 90s X-Men show, where he's just a normal looking dude, but he can just shapeshift. Here he seems more like a freaking Roger Rabbit cartoon character. As a matter of fact, at one point he did turn himself into an actual cartoon rabbit. I feel like, okay, I don't know, this is me personally, and maybe that's my first introduction to Morph. It was in the 90s X-Men show, but I just kind of want him to look like a normal looking dude, but he just shapeshifts into wherever he wants to. Like, he looks like a gray, clay thing. And you see he's like, Holocaust kind of like, knocking the crap out of Rogue, and she seems like she was about to, just pass out, and he's trying to get her to like, don't you die on me kind of situation. So he morphs. It's one of the rare serious moments of Morph, where he morphs into her son in order to give her like the boost that she needs to like get up. Like, we need you to get up. We're not gonna lose you too. Then we get back to, and this is where the moment I was telling you about, and I forgot I actually did get the slide, where Damask, wanted to know what it feels like to kiss, like, she's a total furry. She wanted to know what it will be like to kiss Nightcrawler, and when she does, it's like, that's exactly what I thought, like velvet. I don't know, it's just like, she's a total freak. Oh wow. People had like a thing with Nightcrawler. It's just like these secret furries, pretty much. Let's be honest, they're secret furries. But they meet up with Destiny. She actually got a son, adopted son, who has a mutant ability to, is something to do with language. It's like, no matter what language you speak, whereas, like Spanish, Italian, American, or even alien race, language, he's able to make everybody understand each other. That's his power. And of course, thanks to the Shadow King, who's still like embodying certain people in Avalon, making causing upheaval, and trying to embody the body of Mystique. In the ensuing fight, trying to stop him, the adopted son gets killed, and a lot of the people that was possessed is essentially brain dead, which leaves Destiny no choice but like, okay, it's like, this place is no longer safe anyway. I see that I am needed anyway, so I'm going to go back to America in order to help Magneto. And this is the part where like Sinister reveals to Nathan his like like open up his mind to Nate, so he sees like he's not lying, but it's never really revealed to him that you're also, well, no, it is revealed, because he created Nate from the combined DNA of Scott and Jean. And of course, Nate eventually bumps into those two, but he skedaddles quick. He didn't get enough time to actually say what he wants to say, but he acknowledges that, like, that those are his parents and whatnot. So Jean and Scott make their escape. Going back to these guys, they bump into the Bedlam brothers, who understands like, oh, okay, like this whole place is gone to crap very fast, even to the point where it's like we'll later get to it, but heaven's getting like shut down quickly because a couple of Angel's underlings have been like trading secrets to Apocalypse's enemies, and it's like including Alex's girlfriend, and he doesn't believe that she's pregnant, and it's like it's all going to hell in a handbasket. And of course, the Bedlam brothers don't even think this is fun anymore. Is all crazy. When do you think it was ever fun? Do you know what you were doing? But anyway, they just like, go ahead, Scott, we got this. So they back up Scott and Jean while they hold off like the Guthrie siblings long enough so that way, even though I think the Bedlam brothers can easily take the Guthries easily because they're like country bumpkin hicks. So they make their way to the room where they keep those psychic brains in those jars, destroy that room with those brains so that way they can liberate all the sedated people. So this is where like the girlfriend comes clean about that stuff, but he doesn't believe her. But then it leads to a final confrontation between Alex and Scott. And these two started like duking it out. And of course their powers, like many mutants who are relatives, their powers won't work on each other. So they have to resort to fisticuffs. And of course, Scott is a better fighter than Alex. At the same time, now we go back to what's going on with Apocalypse, where Richter shows back up. He manages, you see that the boy, Charles kid, is in the hands of Apocalypse, along with the shard of the Macron crystal. How did he get that? Those two things? Well, when Gambit shows back up on Earth, they in like, I guess what used to be the Morlock tunnels, I guess. They, the team separates. Well, they eventually, bump into, find like young Charles and Jubilee, because they, Jubilee holds both of those items. So Gambit suspects that Richter and the others will naturally just go after him because they will just assume that he'll have the crystal. So Jubilee is making a run for it, but of course he didn't really pay attention or fully remember which direction she needed to go to head back to the mansion. But she ends up bumping into Strong Guy, who turns coat. I forgot what the reason was. It's like he secretly like hate Gambit, I guess. So he don't want to hurt Jubilee, but Jubilee knowing that she is no match for Strong Guy, so she allows both items to be taken from her without putting up much of a fight. So we go back to Bishop. Storm liberates Bishop and takes out all the Madro duplicates, while Banshee and Quicksilver finds the original Jamie, but he's telling them, you gotta kill me because that's the only way to stop my duplicates. But of course, Quicksilver doesn't want to do that. But then one of Apocalypse's, horsemen show up. This, crazy, shadowy figure thing. Banshee sacrificed himself in order to destroy that creature, and Quicksilver had to do a terrible deed and kill Jamie in order to stop all the duplicates before his team gets overwhelmed by them. Yeah, here's where it is. This creepy little guy. Then we go back to London, and Logan has to point out to Gateway, who's fence-sitting pretty much about like not assisting, given the extenuating circumstances of what's going on in the world. So pretty much like a hardcore in-your-face lesson by showing him a hologram of a young girl getting a human girl getting assassinated essentially by one of Apocalypse's little foot soldiers, and a diary left by her, and he shoves it in his face, and it's like, that's the only thing that got him like to get his butt moving. I'm not sure why like it took all that for a Gateway to actually, you already gone all this way, you might as well help. I don't understand like that mindset at all. But then one of the cyborgs show up that supposedly should have died with Carol, but he survived and then turned Carol into a flying cyborg. But she couldn't go through with taking out Logan. She gets killed by the cyborg guy, but Logan finally popped his claws in that severed hand, because like he still has it. Not sure why he kept it hidden this whole thing. He says he's like waiting to spring this on Apocalypse, but he just unsheaths it then because his other arm hasn't healed yet after the battle. So he popped the left claws and destroyed that cyborg. And that's where and then it turns out that, I forgot the guy's, Braddock, Captain Britain. He turns out to be a turncoat. There's a lot of turncoats going on here. These secret agents of, I don't want to say secret agents, but people who've been influenced by Apocalypse, or just not forced, but like it's like, like I gotta do this, otherwise Apocalypse gonna do that kind of thing. It's so Braddock turns out to be a turncoat, but he couldn't fully go through it. He dies in this battle, but Gateway managed to make a portal in order to get the Armada through, in order to get to near America. Now go back to this is in Paris, mind you, where you meet up with like Tony Stark, Hawkeye, Sue and Ben Grimm, Victor Von Doom, Gwen Stacy. They all get captured by Mikhail, who this is like a Trojan horse thing. They need to get captured, so that way Stark gets experimented on, because he had like this metal chess piece. They wouldn't help themselves, but they know going through that it was tinkered with, so that way it caused kind of like an EMP throughout Mikhail's ship, which allows them to, while Mikhail is talking with like the human resistance leaders, manages to help take control of his uh stuff, essentially. Meanwhile, like, you know, this is where like Matt Murdock's come to Jesus moment with like this mutant empath that got hooked up to all these machines, and his mutant ability to, like, I guess share his, you know, share feelings, I guess, emotions, with Matt, who sees like all the atrocities and everything like that. Man, it's like I expect Matt to do something, fight back or anything like that. He just falls to his knees, and well, he did do something. He unhooks empath because he knows like this is like barbaric. It's like put this guy out of his misery. But that's all he does. He then kneels to the ground and cries. Man, they just like make Daredevil kind of useless. But then Donald Blake, you know, takes on Mikhail, and they both, you know, he sacrifices himself by taking out Mikhail, and they both fall out this clock tower, both to their deaths. While everybody else is, you know, after they realize, now they realize Bruce Banner is Grey Hulk, but they force him to revert back. And it's like, okay, we still need him because he's like a brilliant scientist. So, hold on. So they like Tony's like, look, we need him. He's a brilliant scientist, so we can actually get as many people onto these like essentially, you know, these kind of ships in order to get them off world, because they view this planet as just kind of like just doomed. So, and then while Ben saves this young baby after the father gets shot, he managed to get on board on Sue's ship, but he dies from his wounds. And here's the funny thing: the baby has a little charm on his wrist with the baby's name is Frankie, and is a character in the Marvel comics, the name Frankie. I don't know if it's like a mutant or something. The Frankie is very familiar. I just can't recall the person, because there's many Frankies on him. I don't know. It seems familiar, but a lot of human. A second. Sorry, guys. Just 1 second here. Told you I got sniffles, so. So they make their way off planet. You see, like here, they like just went Star Trek on us, and they'll hit the warp speed. So that's it with those guys. Now we go back with Angel, who pretty much sacrificed himself in order to disrupt, like, in the shield around the Armada after Gambit meets up with Rogue and Colossus and Quicksilver and all those other people to try to rescue Magneto and save the boy and get the crystal. Angel being upset that his underlings, who's not just like minions or anything like that, is people that he actually, his friends and people he care about, that was tortured and died by the hands of Apocalypse's minions. And so he went like total blitzkrieg or kamikaze into the shield, disrupting it, allowing Rogue and Gambit and the others to make their way inside. And of course, like, Rogue had like a brief fight with Gambit, thinking like, "Oh, you're responsible losing my son and everything like that." But she had to be held back because it's like, it wasn't his fault. Like, Guido went turncoat on us. So now that we got all the pieces together, like we got Illyana, Bishop, and Destiny together, we got to get the and then we got the crystal. And now we just need to, because Nick Ray went in and they got help like a Magneto. But then, while Logan and like the human resistance in London sent off their warships, send them flying, and you get this like T-20 and T-15. It's like, it's literally minutes before America's become like a complete nuclear wasteland. Now Jean expecting to sacrifice herself by using her powers to halt the bombardment as much as she could, but Alex shows up and snipes her in the back, killing her. And of course, you got to get the epic, Cyclops Jean. You got to get that. So it leads to the brothers, going to the final standoff, but ultimately Alex managed to kill Scott, but it's Wolverine who shows up to try to find Jean, because he knows she's there and he would rather die with her, and sees what happened, and he kills Alex, and he just kneels down at the body of Scott and Jean. Then of course, yeah, like Nick Ray and Magneto's taking on Apocalypse together. Now, and back to the whole Colossus thing, whereas Illyana is making that doorway because her latent magic powers, because we didn't know it was going to be, her name was going to be Magic or anything like that, because she has like a, she can open up bridges to doorways, to limbo and everything, all that stuff. We didn't know that at the time. But anyway, making the doorway for Bishop to go through, to go back in time in order to put a stop to Legion, and use Legion's psychic ability to get inside his mind to see what he saw, or what the altered timeline from what he done will be if he doesn't stop right here and now. And of course, then it's like straight up Mortal Kombat, where Magneto just used his, I guess, the iron in his, an Apocalypse blood, and just rips this dude in half. And the first thing I saw at this image, all I hear is like, fatality. That's immediately in my mind. So Magneto just like completely soloed Apocalypse. But also, Colossus ends up dying by the hands of Gambit, because he went crazy, because he thought like something's going to happen to Illyana, because his understandably this is his last family, but the fact that he got so blind by it, where everybody, he gets, he's knocking everybody away, but Shadowcat, stands in front of him as he's charging full force at the crystal, trying to get his sister Illyana. And of course, she doesn't activate her phasing powers and gets trampled by her husband. And this is where like Gambit is like, okay, you went fucking crazy. And so he, charges one of his cards and just, sends it flying into his torso and just like, sends it right through. He kills him, and just he reverts back to his human form and he dies there. And it's just like this whole thing is like a horrible situation for everybody. A lot of people is dying left and right. And then Magneto's with Rogue and their son, and they just want to spend those last few moments just together, knowing that they managed to at least, hopefully, not only stop the apocalypse, but hopefully, manage to make a better, go back to a better timeline than what this turned out to be. And the entire North America just gets annihilated. And everything gets back to where it was. So now we into like a prologue here, where Bishop's still getting like remnants of, because all the stuff that went on with the current timeline, along with the Age of Apocalypse timelines, getting like jumbled up together. Eventually that goes away, but Bishop's having like a talk with Xavier about what transpired, because he kept in bursts of outrage, not outrage, but just bursts of rages, where it's like, Scott Summers, you prelate bastard. And he's trying to like, attack Scott and Hank, because 1 second here. Because he remembers them as like these horrible, at least especially Hank being one of those horrible mutants, causing all these atrocities in that timeline. He just can't reconcile with what's the proper timeline now and what used to be a false timeline. So he's trying to talk with Xavier in order to try to get his mind right, essentially, because it ultimately is him that actually remembers everything, while everybody else can only know that what the proper timeline is, and they getting everything secondhand by Bishop. This is like Scott is just trying to like dude, calm down, and it's like Bishop just like he's just like he getting PSD flashbacks right now, because that Age of Apocalypse is just like horrific. It was like a nightmare. And then you get this other little side story, because this is like a long comic. I actually still have this comic. This is like a prologue. I actually have this in my closet, where this mutant who, I don't know, has lizard skin or something like that, I don't know, trying to make his way to Xavier's mansion, all the while his mutant abilities started creeping up over his skin, and then all these people chasing him down from this diner like they ain't got nothing better else to do, because Hank's girlfriend, who's like a reporter, got a tip about this legacy virus, spread it out on the news cycle, and got everybody in a frenzy. So now you think like it was bad for mutants before, now they gotta worry about mutants spreading diseases and everything like that. So now everybody's in a frenzy, and now this kid's gonna die by the hands of this this mob, essentially. but uh Xavier picks this up mentally, and he gets everybody to like, you know, red alert everybody, and they rest because he's literally not too far away from the mansion, and he manages to get there, but it's, you know, far too late, and he's, you know, he manages to hold on to his last breath to actually speak a little bit with Xavier. And also you get Dark Beast, you get a moment where he's like, because like Nate Gray and Dark Beast, through different means, managed to get transported into like the main timeline. Beast tried to escape like the nuclear blast by trying to utilize this kind of teleporting device, but it got, you know, messed up. So I guess that would explain how he got into the main timeline. While Nick Gray, I don't know, you know, maybe it's because his powers got something to do with it. I don't know. He manages to, at least for a short while, he was like, it was a whole thing of him being in like this timeline. It's all, I remember it being idiotic. Doesn't really matter. So, you know, we get, you know, Xavier left cradling the body of this mutant who was literally beaten to death, while the X-Men, you know, stand by over him. It's very sad, honestly, but this this kind of encourages, like, you know, Xavier to, like, you know, push on through despite the hardships, because there will be hardships in the future, because, you know, because like the truth of the matter, my X-Men, is that we would be insane not to fight for a better world, because heaven help us if this is our future. Heaven help us all. Amen to that, bub. And of course, there is like a whole nother thing with Nate Gray and him teaming up with Scott and Jean in the main timeline and finding this because there's like epilogue where some remnants of the Age of Apocalypse is somehow coming into the main timeline, like old robotic forces that's merging. They're like, you know, cyborg and robotic things are merged in a grotesque thing, and their dead corpses is laid out on the ground in this icy island or what have you. And it's like, you know, gotta, oh, 1 second here, one last time. Yeah, it's like a whole thing where it's like, oh my god, we gotta figure out why these Age of Apocalypse stuff is popping up in the main timeline. They should not exist. It's a whole thing. I guess that they resolved it or something like that, but I didn't want to bother making slides of that. It didn't really amount to much. It's just Nate spending time with his parents, pretty much. But anyway, that was Age of Apocalypse. Wow, that was literally 3 hours long. It was like, it's crazy. I knew it was gonna be long. That's why I made sure, like, okay, I gotta start early in this because it's gonna take a while. But that was Age of Apocalypse. Honestly, aside from certain POVs like the Colossus little arc, it's like a pretty cool story and very monumental, and like, you know, it was a lot. It was like crazy what stuff going on, and like different avenues people took in this world, that, you know, their whole life was changed through this whole entire ordeal. It's just, you know, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, the next comic book review I will be doing is gonna be a DC related content. Is, you know, it's gonna like kind of like a mini series, so don't worry, it's not gonna take too long. But I want to do that just in time for like Black History Month, because it's something I wanted to talk about for a hot minute. But after that, I want to get right back to more X-Men stuff, because the next one, what's the next X-Men event? Actually, I want to start like talking about some uh other X-Men, at least a couple of X-Men teams, X Factor and X Force. It won't take too long, but you got to give some like shine to some other uh you know branching X-Men type of teams. But then I got and then like the last, like, well, not the last one, but after that it'd be House of M. But I have some other alternate universe X-Men stories I really want to deal with, but I'm gonna leave those like as a surprise. But essentially, we got at least 6 more X-Men related content, but the last one is gonna be probably just as long as this one, if not slightly longer, but it's really good. But anyway, that is Age of Apocalypse. If you see this on, you get this guy, get this on YouTube. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this event. Leave a comment below. Have you read this in a while? Did you like it? Do you think it's mid? Whatever. And yeah, and I'll see you guys. I don't know, in a couple of days, because I got at least 3 movies I want to review next week, and yeah, I still gotta get right back into binging season 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. I had to take a bit of like a break because I was, getting sick. So now that like I'm getting a little bit better, I'm gonna get back to it. So anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Peace.